Hi everyone, so Season 10 has been out for a little bit and I keep getting questions how to choose the boons in Infernal Hordes. Obviously that is a pretty big deal, and now that I have done like 100 of these runs, I think I have a pretty good understanding of how to consistently get the best results. So I want to talk through that a little bit and I will show you examples. So first things first, which of the compasses do you want to choose? Well, there's the Fleeting Hordes, which is the 4-wave one that does not work in Torment difficulty, so that is out anyway. So we have 6, 8 and 10. For me, usually I go for the 8 waves. The reason for that is that it's the most consistently like Bartok spawn versus like reward versus time ratio effectively. So the main target is to get 1000 Ether flat or more if you can. Because with 1000 you pay 666 for Bartok, then he drops 66 and you have 400 left to open the big chest. So this is kind of the main reward, and then you can use whatever leftover Ether you have either on the gold or on the equipment chest. For me, usually I open the equipment chest, but since we don't have dupes and the stuff these days, for people that don't trade especially, it's not bad to open a gold chest too. So this is kind of what you're going for. With 10 waves, you can much more consistently reach Bartok, especially if the build is not super optimized for hordes, or it's, maybe just like a bit of a struggle still in Torment 4 or something like that. You obviously have 2 extra waves with a lot more juice in order to get to 1000, or at the very least get to 666 in order to get Bartok, because that could sometimes also happen that you don't even have that. In 10 waves, you almost always guarantee 666. For 8 waves, it could happen that you get really unlucky and it just didn't work out. But a 6-wave run is really tough to get to Bartok even, because you're just missing synergies, you're missing waves. And I think that 6-wave hordes are going to be mainly useful after Season 10, when you just want to do a quick Infernal Horde Whisper or something like that, open the chest at the end, and that's it. Now, with that being said, let's go through the boons here. So I have like a little kind of like TLDR here, and then we have all of the examples here also on our Maxwell guide. You can check this out. This is here in the Infernal Hordes post, and you have all of the boons here, so you can actually look at them and, and compare a little bit. So let's talk about the best stuff and why, and then we go down here the list. So the overall consistently best is Ether Lords. So there is one boon here that says Ether Fiends spawn as Ether Lords and drop 3 times Ether. This is kind of the jackpot. Whenever you see this, you pick this basically. The reason for that is that Ether Fiends actually just spawn pretty frequently, and there are other ways to spawn Ether Fiends in addition to just filling the bar every time. Plus, every time you kill one of these Ether Lords, you also progress the bar towards the next event. So this is just overall really good, and you can juice them up more with some of the other boons that make them drop more. So Ether Lords are just kind of like really nice, and basically every time I get this relatively early, I guarantee a 1000 Ether run at least. So that is really nice. Now there's one little caveat here, which is that the Ether Lords are also kind of like the hardest in there. So if your build is not like giga blasting like Torment 4 for example yet, then those Ether Lords can get pretty beefy, to be honest, because there's also some other boons they can pick that makes them even tankier, and they get more and more health and so on, and they do get pretty tanky compared to everything else in there. So this is something to keep in mind, but Ether Lords are basically always the pick. Then we have Ether Fiends, kind of related to that, because there's a bunch of stuff with Ether Fiends where we have extra Ether here, like this for example. This also carries over to the Ether Lords. And then you also have Ether Fiends spawn in place of elites. This is very good. So when you see that, this is even better than the +2, for example, because you just get more of them. And then when you have more of them, you also spawn more events. So this kind of like just synergizes with each other. So as soon as you get the Ether Lords, you start picking basically everything that says Ether Fiends. And this is just really good. Then you also have some kind of like random stuff. There's the events spawn faster and the extra goblin. So there's this one here, the Ether Goblin, for example. This one is just very nice. Every one of those goblins is 20 Ether, I think. And they do appear usually at least once or twice per wave. So if you get this early on, this is easily a few hundred or so, just kind of like stacking up throughout the run. So this is usually a very good pick. And then there's also the faster events, which is the Exalted Hordes here. So this is really good. Because you just get more stuff. So every time you fill a bar, you fill it faster. And then, for example, instead of spawning 10 different events, you're gonna get like 14 different events or something like that in a wave. So you just get more stuff here. So this is also just really nice. If you don't get any Ether Lord or Ether Fiend stuff, I would usually pick this. Or if you already have this and you have a bunch of other Ether Fiend stuff, and then you get like Ether Fiend plus events faster, in that case, I would probably still take the faster. If you already have built a bunch of synergies and you already stacked up a bunch of these +2 Ether things, for example, or something like that, then it's probably worth to just get more of them than just adding a little bit more of the Ether to them. Now let's go into the depends list here. So we have Chaos Waves first of all. Chaos Waves are usually pretty decent. So there's like 6 different types or so. There's like the Defend the Masters, there's the Ether Fiends, the Ether Lords, Collect the Wisps, there's the Goblin Wave of course, and yeah, 1 or 2 that I forget, I think, or so. So the TLDR is that a typical Chaos Wave is somewhere in the range of 200 or so Ether, and then there's some good ones. So the Ether Lords can be like 500 if you like one-shot them easily, basically. And then you have the Goblins that can go all the way up to like 3,000 or so if you play like Lightning Spear Sorg, or maybe like 2,000 on another good builds, or at least like 1,000 plus. So if you have the damage to this one-shot Goblins and you're relatively fast, then a Goblin Wave will single-handedly complete the entire run for you, and then you just don't really care about anything. So that is kind of nice. It's kind of the jackpot. But the problem with those Goblins is, well, they don't appear that often, and the Ether Lords are seemingly even more rare to me, at least. So I don't show exactly what are the chances, but it's probably in the range of like maybe 10% for the Goblins and also the Ether Lords. So both of these basically win the run for you, one even harder than the other. And the others are just kind of like okay most of the time. So the thing is with Chaos Waves also, when you pick them, especially early in the run, you will not pick one of the other synergies. And if you have a good option, like you get something like Ether Lords, or you get something like any of these here basically, and this is like wave 2, then you will most likely just get less total by doing the Chaos Wave compared to just picking one of the good ones. Because, you know, every time you pick one of those boons, the earlier in the run, the more value you get out of it throughout the run, while the Chaos Wave is always the same. So it's usually better to pick a Chaos Wave later in the run in order to try to just kind of save it. So if your run is just not going well, like it's like wave 7 out of 8, you have 500 Ether, and you just don't really have anything, and if a Chaos Wave pops up, yeah, I would go in. But if it's like wave 2 and I get one of these things here, then I would not go into a Chaos Wave. So this kind of like depends a little bit on like how the run is going. Sometimes you can just YOLO and hope for the best, and maybe you get the 1000 afterwards because you got the Ether Lord Chaos Wave, or you got the Goblin Chaos Wave. So that is really nice. But most of the time Chaos Waves are actually something I skip. So that is just something to keep in mind. So it really depends on how desperate you are. The more desperate you are, the more likely I would go into the Chaos Wave. And if I'm not desperate at all and I have a really good run at my hands, sometimes I can just get more than 200 Ether from a normal wave. So since that is kind of like the average outcome, I tend to skip Chaos Waves pretty often, also sometimes later in the run. Now let's talk about Spires. Everyone loves Spires, of course, but the thing is that my best run ever so far, outside of getting Goblins, was with Spires actually. So that's kind of hilarious, but I have managed to get, I think, over 2,000 Ether on a Spire run without picking a Chaos Wave. So those things can get really crazy because you have a bunch of these extra multipliers where Spires get like extra Ether, and then there's also like a ×2 and like another ×2 and another ×2. You can get this thing 3 times, and at some point these Spires drop like 70 Ether or something like that per Spire. So this thing can get really crazy. And then you have stuff like Masters spawn Spires, and you have the faster events and all that stuff. And if you happen to do like a 10 wave run and you get all of the Spire stuff, it is ridiculous. But the thing is, of course, it's kind of a big gamble because this also needs the most synergies. If you get Ether Lords, there's one thing you pick, and then it just kind of, it gets juicier and juicier. But for Spires, you kind of need like 7 different synergies in a row in order for this to work out. So it is a pretty big gamble, but it can be really juicy. Now that being said, of course, most people don't really have the opportunity to actually clear Spires very well. And with some builds, it's just really tough. However, it seems like there is an update coming for Spires, and that will probably solve this largely, I hope. So we'll see what it will do. But for now, just keep this in mind, Spires can be insane. And especially with an update that makes them easier to clear, this is something to keep in mind. Then we have masters. So masters are just kind of like a nice bonus pick that I throw in here and there. So there's stuff like at the wave start, you spawn 2 masters. There's stuff like masters give you more per boon you have picked or so. It's just a little bit of extra, or like masters now spawn more masters or something like that when they die. So these kind of things are just kind of like a little filler. If you don't have anything else here of like the top ones, then I sometimes pick the mass stuff. So this is kind of nice. And especially like this master spawn at the wave start, it just gives you like a bit of like a head start on, for example, spawning the next events. Because every time you clear one of those, you get a bit of a progression bar, and that helps out a little bit. Then you have the masters spawn this or that. So there can be masters spawn Nether Fiends, which then convert to Nether Lords. There can be master spawn Spires, master spawn Hellborne, master spawn themselves, and so on. So this usually is a pretty good pick if you get one that is something you're already building. So as I just described, for example, the Spires. If you go full Spire strat and you get master spawn Spires, that's pretty good. If you go Nether Fiends and master spawn Nether Fiends, that is pretty good. Hellborne, no. So I'm gonna talk about this in a second. But yeah, so master spawn something, this is also kind of like the filler stuff. If you get this, it's pretty nice, and also it gives you more events, so you get more spawns, and this kind of like synergizes with itself. Then you have the Hellfire, so this is just kind of like some also like random filler. So you have this here at the end of the wave, you get a bit of Aether. It doesn't really help you with anything, but it also does add up. So I think it's like 9 to 15 or something like that from like the small one. So yeah, the average here is like 12 or so. And this means that when you get this at wave 1 in a 10 wave run, for example, yeah, it's just like 120 Ether by itself or something like that. It's not terrible, but also not great, because yeah, if I would only take this when you have like basically nothing else that would give you anything here. And I would probably even take like a Spire less often, ×2, for example, over the Hellfire here. And then you have Butcher. This is kind of similar to the Chaos Wave, effectively. So Butcher is like a flat 100 when you get him. Kind of nice, but also it doesn't build any synergies. So this is exactly the same consideration. So early in the run, if you see a Butcher, I would not pick it. Later in the run, when it's like wave 7 out of 8 again or something like that, I would definitely pick a Butcher, because it's very unlikely you're gonna get another 100 Ether from just picking a random boon that maybe juices up the rest of your stuff a little bit. But also keep in mind, Butcher can be quite tanky, and while he's present, you cannot spawn many more monsters. So usually you have to clear him first in order to get anything else. So if you cannot do that in a few seconds, then he might actually make it worse for you. But especially if it's like very late in the waves, then Butcher is pretty nice. It's just like boom, 100 Ether, and you move on. And lastly, Hellborne. So how the tables have turned, right? So Hellborne is just really terrible. Every time I tried Hellborne, it just did not work. There's stuff like Hellfire spawns Hellborne. There's like the extra Hellborns. There's the Hellborne ambush you. I kind of tried everything, and everything sucks. It's just so bad. And these guys just don't really pop up anymore. This is kind of the main reason. In the past, we had insane amounts of Hellborne spawns, and they would just be everywhere. And then you get like packs of 5 or 6 Hellborns, and they all drop like 6 Ether, and it would be ridiculous. But now it's just kind of the exact opposite. I think they have really over-nerfed them. Every Hellborne run I've tried with any of those combinations, even with other stuff already, like, events spawn faster, and we had masses spawn Hellborns, it just never worked out. So whenever you see Hellborne, you want to not pick it, basically. I would even pick like a random Spires plus 3 Ether over Hellborne, to be honest. Basically anything is better than Hellborne. So this is the character summary here. I hope that it would like tweak this a little bit, because they just are bait, I think, and they just never appear, it seems. Yeah, and there you have it. So this is my Infernal Horde Boons summary. So Etherlords, really good, together with other Fiend stuff. Faster events, Goblins are really good, especially early on as well. It's kind of like a similar consideration as like, Butcher and Chaos Wave. If you get a Goblin at like wave 6 or 7, and I guess you don't really care, but it's still something. Basically, these like extra like flat rewards, let's say, like Chaos Waves and Butcher, they are like really good late in the run. And then early in the run, you're just going to try to get like some of the big synergies and then juice it up. And then, yeah, Spires can be insane if you have the opportunity to actually clear them. Also, like, it remains to be seen with the patch. Yeah, and then you have a bunch of filler stuff here. Masters, Hellfire, and then Hellborne is bad. So this is my summary. So hope this helps you out in Season 10 with your Infernal Horde runs. I've been doing plenty of those, but I am also relatively over it for the rest of the season, I gotta say. I'm mainly farming Chaos Rifts now, and Academic Dungeons and Hell Tides for that, to get my Chaos items, which actually seems like a faster strat anyway. But for now, if you're an Infernal Hordes enjoyer, then hope you like this. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.